Governor Beshear, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me today. We're 6 months into your second term, so still getting a lot of stuff done. I want to talk about some promises and priorities laid out on the campaign trail.
Okay.
You talked about teacher pay a lot. You wanted a mandatory 11% pay raise. The General Assembly did increase education funding this year in the budget, but raises, they were not mandatory. We are seeing some districts start to increase pay, some on the high end, around 10 to 11% like you were proposing, some on the low end, 1 to 2%. I'm seeing a lot around 4 or 5%. Did you deliver on that campaign promise?
Well, we pushed hard, and we presented multiple options to the General Assembly. When it became apparent that they weren't going to do an across-the-board mandatory raise, which has been done in the past and is absolutely necessary and has been done in other states like Tennessee, what we did is we pushed for as much transportation funding as possible, knowing that transportation costs had been underfunded for over a decade, and that's where a lot of the problem comes from, where they have to divert other funds. Knowing that if we pump that up, every superintendent that I talked to had said that they would increase pay, and that was our best chance to get the best amount out. Educators that I've talked to are generally happy about getting a pay increase. Obviously, we need to do more than even the 11% we originally had out there to catch up. Certainly before those raises, the General Assembly's failure to act had even dropped us a spot from 40th to 41st in average teacher pay. I think we're going to see it improve, but there's absolutely more work to be done, and I'm not going to stop until we show our teachers, but all our educators, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our custodians, that we truly value them because of how they invest in our kids.
You said you received a lot more cooperation on the budget this year than in years past.
We had cooperation in the past, but certainly we had good talks. The Speaker of the House came through on a couple of things. The Senate was very open to meeting with us, and I want to give credit where credit's due. Pushed to get a lot of different programs that mattered and counted in it, and so we did have a lot of very constructive budget talks.
Universal pre-K was the next big issue you brought up often on the campaign trail. You remember the Republican alternative proposed this year, the Horizons Act by Senator Carroll, that was aimed at supporting private providers. Neither of these proposals ended up passing. Federal money, that's expiring soon for child care, and there's already a shortage of these providers in the state. What can be done moving forward that can not just help the families that may be having a barrier to the workforce right now, but also help out those providers who may be facing some tough choices in the near future, whether it's letting some people go or shutting down entirely?
Well, I think certainly moving into the next budget session that comes, we have got to get business and businesses statewide and local to come up here and to advocate for not only universal pre-K, but additional support for child care. This seemed to have become somehow a Democrat-Republican issue when this is about the lives of our kids. Georgia has universal pre-K. They fund it through their lottery. It's not a red or a blue issue. And universal pre-K is the only way we solve a quarter of this problem, all 4-year-olds, and we solve it everywhere, even child care deserts. Every other plan that's out there at best had us preserving spots, not picking up spots, which meant we weren't adding spots in places that are absolutely necessary. So I believe that the only way that we don't just make a little improvement the next time, but make great strides forward is having universal pre-K in our public schools, but also understanding that we need to help our child care facilities as they transition from 4-year-olds to focusing on 3 and under, that there are some additional costs there. And now from our child care community, we're going to need some greater transparency in the costs that are out there. The ask was really big. And certainly some of these being nonprofit, some of them being private businesses, just to find a path forward on transparency on what can get there, but what also creates a viable future.
So there's going to be a lot of focus in November, not on a particular candidate, but likely an issue this year, at least in Kentucky, and that being school choice. You've said many times that you do not support this upcoming amendment that's going to be opening up public money to fund schools outside of the public school system if approved. Republicans argue that the same surrounding states that we're competing for teachers also have some form of school choice. So how does that affect the pitch that you'll be making to voters?
Well, people who are for it call it school choice. In reality, it's called defunding public schools. It's no new money. It's just allowing money that right now supports a system of public education to go elsewhere. And what it is it's the General Assembly saying, here, private school, take all this money and we won't put any of the same requirements on you. We won't have any of the same metrics that you have to meet. We won't require any of the same credentialing that we require in our public schools. Listen, if we want our public schools to do better and we think it's the current restrictions or limitations, how about we open those up? But public dollars are for public schools. Private schools are already funded, and I have no issue if a parent makes the decision to send their children there. But that's a decision that comes with needing to pay for that and pay for it privately. When you look at what would happen with all these dollars leaving a public school system, is most of our kids would get left behind. A certain few might be able to get into this school or that school. A whole lot of people that are already going to private school would just have public dollars head that way, and everybody else would get left behind. When you look at this statewide, not just in Lexington and not just in Louisville, whose representatives by and far voted against this amendment, there are only public schools, and they're going to lose money, ultimately to the urban parts of this state and already struggling with some of those school systems, just having fewer kids in school overall, keeping up with those costs. I'm going to be very aggressive in opposing it. It would be devastating for our communities. I believe in our public schools, but if we think there are areas where they are not succeeding, and listen, we need to do better in a lot of areas, let's look at giving them the same flexibility that we would give all the other schools in some other model.
Do you consider charter schools, public schools, or private schools, or some other type?
You can call just about anything a charter. It really depends on what's inside it. Look at all the magnet schools that we have. In some other states, that's what they call charter schools. Then look at places like Florida that have for-profit private charter schools that are getting no results at all. And so what I think has happened is people have just created this term that's somewhere in between public schools and private schools, but can all look totally different. Look at different schools within a school that you can create, that we have seen over at Frederick Douglass, for instance. Let's give our public schools the ability to innovate, and I'm all for that within the public school system.
The House Speaker says the long-planned state income tax elimination may tap the brakes around 3% or so. You did not sign the original bill that started that cut, if I recall, due to the added state sales taxes. But you did sign the 2023 bill that affirmed the cut down to the rate that we're at now, 4%. What do you think is the right direction to go on this?
Well, I do think those are healthy comments. And it's recognizing that we're going to have a duty to provide important services to our people. And while right now the income tax, if meeting certain conditions, decreases the income tax, the train doesn't move the other way. And so we've got to be really careful that we don't do what Kansas did, and that was race to zero. And at a time when the economies were improving in other states, theirs were cratering. They had to stop all their transportation projects. They couldn't give economic development incentives. Their Supreme Court said they had unconstitutionally low levels of funding for their public schools. And then their Republican General Assembly had to come in and restore the income tax. We want something that is sustainable long term. Now, when we are doing really well, it does make sense. April, we had our second best month for general fund revenue ever at $1.8 billion. We've had 20 straight months of $1 billion revenue. So when that's happening, we want to be able to give relief to our people. But we just need something that in the long term will help us grow and is solid enough, reliable enough to where we know that we can continue with the programs that are desperately needed.
And sticking on the economy, the state seems to be doing pretty well. Kentucky broke its exports record last year at $40.2 billion. That increased 16.6% up from the previous year in 2023. What's behind that increase, and can we expect the trend to continue?
You can. We are booming, and it is thrilling, and there is enough credit for everyone. I mean, we've had more investment in the last 4.5 years by far than any governor, whether they've served one term or 2 terms. About 53,000 new jobs. The last 2 years, the 2 highest back-to-back wages, announced incentivized wages that we've ever seen. Our best years for tourism. Last year, the best, beating out the year before, 2022. And then you see good things happening. Our drug overdose rate last year went down 10%. The year before, 5%. So there are really good things happening, and there are reasons to be optimistic. And that's what I see across Kentucky. You know, while our country seems to have this pessimism that is hanging over us in all our communities, and regardless of party. I see local officials and judges excited about these new investments. And we're now at the top of everybody's list. We were number 3 in economic development per capita last year, number 2 the year before. So we are booming, and I do not see it stopping. Our first 6 months were good this year. I actually think the second 6 months will be even better. And if that's the case, we'll have one of our top 5 to 6 years in our history.
Now, folks are also taking note that you're singing the praises of how well we're doing in other parts of the country and speaking on other political issues outside of the state. And that's raised some speculation about future ambitions and national ambitions. What do you make of that speculation?
Well, I'm committed to serving every day as governor. I love Kentucky. It is my home. And I want to be able to look back and see a legacy that's not D's or R's in Kentucky or anywhere else. It's how much better the lives of our families are, how much more opportunities our kids or our grandkids have, how much we can make a difference. And so, yes, while I'm traveling a little nationally and telling our story of progress with the temperature turned down, neighbors no longer yelling at neighbors, how we govern based on where people live, jobs, infrastructure, healthcare, public safety, public education, things that we can all get behind. My first duty is always here. And I'm always going to make sure it's here because we don't know how long this incredible window of opportunity that we're in is open. So we've got to sprint as hard and as fast. And in thoroughbred terms, we've got to eat up as much of that track as possible because for the first time, we're just outpacing the field and outpacing other states. And our people deserve this. We've been looked down upon for way too long. This is our chance to lead, and I want to make sure we do.
So this will be coming up soon, Juneteenth. You declared that a state holiday this year and created protections in the workplace for those with natural hair. They're working in state government. It mirrors the Crown Act that's still being debated upstairs. Why was that important?
Well, I believe that we're all children of God, beautiful the way that God made us. And no one should ever have to worry about their natural hairstyle keeping them from getting a job. And listen, when you look at the hairstyles that they ended up falling predominantly in racial terms, and that's wrong. And that's a vestige of the past that it's just time that we ensure does not move into the future. And then we look at Juneteenth. And I think it's important that we recognize our history. Listen, this is the greatest country in the history of the world, but we have made mistakes. And we've made some really bad mistakes. And by recognizing them, and at the same time recognizing the contributions of African Americans to this country, we not only admit our history, but we commit to doing better and to being better and to working to put in, again, all that work that it takes to be better. So, just another step to try to create that more perfect union. And I want every Kentuckian to grow up thinking that they're valuable and that they are important, that nothing is wrong with them, that they are amazing creatures of God and that they can achieve anything that they ever want to.
The state is undertaking the largest housing development construction for communities in the West hit by the 2021 tornadoes. In the East, we just hit the 100th rehabilitated home there. And we just had a federal disaster declaration for the tornadoes in April, and we have potentially another one that's on the way for another storm. Just give me an idea of how irregular it is to deal with so many different natural disasters across the state and have to respond to so much.
First, let me start with, I'm thrilled by that recent housing announcement. When we look at the West, where the tornadoes hit, the one we've been working on the longest, we now have hundreds of new homes in Mayfield and Dawson Springs, some in Bremen, more in Bowling Green. But the hole that was there was rentals. That's what kept me up at night because FEMA doesn't help there. That's not in their program. And Dawson, a town I know where my dad is from so well, losing that, they were going to lose a lot of their population. And I really want to thank the Kentucky Housing Corporation and the Department of Local Government because they got innovative. They found a way to combine funds and application processes in a way that's never been done before. That is your government innovating, and because of that, we have the largest housing announcement we've ever seen. Almost 1,000 units in the areas hit by the tornado. And these public servants, truly public servants in that instance, deserve a lot of credit. In the East, we're also doing innovative things that have never been done before. We're building whole new communities that are going to be bigger than just rebuilding. They're going to be a solution to the housing crisis in parts of eastern Kentucky. Just Skyview alone in Perry County where we're building, we could have 1,000 people living up there in 3 to 4 years. How special that will be for that region. But we do keep getting hit. More so than a lot of states, though I know Iowa's been hit pretty hard, and many others, and our hearts go out to them. What's important, if you're me, or if you're emergency management, is you don't get tired. I was there over the Memorial Day storms from 9 p.m. at night to 1:30 in the morning, up back early in the morning, and then off to the communities. We've got to be there for the families that are harmed in the most recent storm, just as much as we've been there for the families harmed in the very first tornado. As long as we're going to get hit by this weather, we've got to provide the services, be committed to rebuilding. You know, that 100th home in the east, and that was just from one group, the Housing Development Alliance. I think we're a little over 300 when you put them all together. That lady and her 2 high school aged daughters lived in a travel trailer for 20 months. Can you imagine that? And they're now about to all have their own bedroom. I got a chance to talk to her, and I said, you're important, and you're as important as the first person we put in these homes. And I said, and the person 100 after you is going to be just as important as this family, and we're going to keep working. And other families that we'd built homes for in the area were coming up to meet their new neighbor. Something pretty special, but it just reminds us that you got to keep pushing. I will say, one of my favorite things as governor, and you never want to have to govern through a natural disaster, is watching kids, especially little kids, walk into their new home and pick out their room. Oh, I mean, you see God in every single moment in it. They're leaping up and down. There's this amazing memory that they're making while their parents are crying and I'm crying that hopefully pushes out a little bit of the trauma, and it makes every bit of effort worth it.
You got 3.5 more years left in this position. What are the absolute top priority things you want to make sure get done before you leave this office?
We have to continue this biggest, best economic development win streak we've ever been on. We have to continue to get the big investments. We've got to continue to build the biggest facilities, factories that we have ever seen, which we are doing right now. We got to get Blue Oval SK up and running. The first facility is about to come online. We've got to continue to bring more jobs to eastern and western Kentucky, because right now businesses are willing to move to people instead of expecting people to drive to businesses. We got to get that Mountain Parkway fully 4-laned. We're already seeing its impact in Salyer'sville. We got to be able to move that to Prestonsburg, to Pikeville, and what it's going to do for eastern Kentucky. We got to get more movement on the I-69 bridge in western Kentucky because of what it'll do there. We're going to get a lot done on the Brent Spence Companion Bridge up in the north. We're going to have the money to bring internet to every home and every business across Kentucky. We got to continue to build out water and sewer because it's a basic human right. Continue to bring health care in new communities. So a little bit to do over the next 3.5 years, but I'm blessed to be in this job at a time when we have resources to do it, when we have a lot of partners here to do it. And I love how everybody comes together. It could be a Republican county judge and myself. It could be anybody that's out there. When people see what we're doing as a people, as communities, they want to jump on board, and it's building a better world for my 2 kids and for everybody else's.
All right, Governor Beshear, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you.